about this lecture titled Periodicity of Redshift and New Challenge to the Big Bang Cosmology. It will be presented by Dr. Shishir Rai, who is a senior professor at National Institute of Advanced Studies, NIAS. And as the time is being shown, it has now started. Now, actually, all groups and institutions which are just collectively organizing this event, and so that many people are benefited. This was our actually expectation and wishes, so that many people are benefited from this presentation. So you can see the Jain Academy of Scholars, JS Ahmedabad, is the main actually institution which has taken initiative along with Dr. Daulat Singh Kothari Institute for Research and Education, Udaipur, which has started recently. Many of you might be knowing, but I thought I should mention that Jain Academy of Scholar in Ahmedabad has started recently. It is just, I mean, a 1-year-old body, and it has been acting as a very good platform for bringing Jain scholars on one platform so that they can discuss various aspects of Jainism and science. And Dr. Daulat Singh Kothari Institute for Research and Education has started again about just 1 year ago, and it is there in the memory of the son of India. I would call it one of the uh, most I would say most respected scientists. I mean, the country has produced, and he has actually laid foundation of science in India. That is what I would say. Then we have Vigyan Samiti Udaipur, then Science and Spirituality Research Institute Ahmedabad, then Darshan Vigyan, this Prakosh Udaipur, Science and Spirituality Study Group Udaipur, then Varisht Nagrik Parishad Udaipur, Marana Bhopal College Purva Chhatra Parishad Udaipur, then Prabuddha Chintan Prakost Udaipur, विज्ञान समिति वरिष्ठ महिला परोक्त आदि प्रकोष्ठ भारत विकास परिषद उदयपुर जैन इंजीनियर सोसाइटी उदयपुर and Mahavir International Udaipur. So these are the institutions who are contributing, and I mean, as I told you that this institute started, this Dr. Daulat Singh Kothari Institute started in the memory of Professor D.S. Kothari, and from the institute side we are organizing one lecture every month by one eminent scientist or eminent scholar. So 3 lectures have already been held, and this will be the 4th in the category. So now, I mean, the whole lecture is presented on the basis of this paper, whose title is Periodicity of Quasar and Galaxy Redshift. It is written by Arindam Mal, then Sarbani Palit, Ujjwal Bhattacharya, and Shishir Roy. It appeared recently last year in Astronomy and Astrophysics Journal, and its reference is given, and its link is also given, and the agencies, institutions which were involved in this laboratory for electro-optic system, first state is Penya Industrial Estate, Bangalore, then Computer Vision and Pattern Recognition Unit, Indian Statistical Institute, Calcutta, then National Institute of Advanced Studies, IISSC campus, Bangalore. And it was accepted on the 12th August. It was received on 29 November, so it took 4 years to just this paper to be accepted. Uh, and now the interesting part is that the steady state model is very close to the description of universe as given in Jain Agmas or Jain scripture. I mean, so this is the figure which shows the Jain concept of this universe. So actually, I mean, that is the main interest of the Jain Academy of Scholars. Now this is about the speaker. So now actually I will hand over the responsibility to Dr. Narendra Bhandari, who will now conduct the whole program because he is from planetary science. And as you know, Dr. Narendra Bhandari, who is PhD from TIFR and was a very senior scientist at Physical Research Laboratory in the Department of Space. And he is the main person behind the Chandrayaan mission of our country. And he has played Actually, he has actually done lot of work in the rocks of moon, which were brought about 40 years ago or something like that. Extensively, he has worked in this field. So, as a man of planetary science now, and he knows much more about this whole thing. So now I just request Dr. Narendra Bhandari to take over and actually formally introduce Dr. Shishir Roy. Dr. Narendra Bhandari.
Thank you, Pokharna Sahab. It is a pleasure to introduce the speaker of this evening, Dr. Shishir Roy. Actually, I met him many years ago. As you know, he's working at the National Institute of Advanced Studies at Bangalore, and he used to conduct this dialogue between various religions about some concepts. So he had this Buddhism and Hinduism and yoga and everything. And then he wanted to introduce Jainism. So he called me there, and that was a great meeting. And that is when I met him there and came to know about his work. So that particular dialogue and that book has been published recently, about a year ago or something, and it is called Space, Time, and Causality. And he did it, this publication with B.V. Srikantan, Professor Srikantan, who was earlier at TIFR. So, talking about his subject, I talked about these red shifts in my lecture last month. And there is a Doppler redshift, there is a gravitational redshift, and what is the real cause? That is a, sometimes questioned, although it is generally believed that this redshift we see in the sky is due to Doppler effect. But it all depends on analysis. And Dr. Shishir Roy has done uh, recently a very fine analysis of his data, because he's well versed with statistical analysis. He worked at uh, Indian Institute of Statistical Institute at Calcutta, and he has held many chairs. He is a Homi Bhabha Fellow currently at National Institute of Advanced Studies. Earlier, he was Raman Pai Chair Professor at NIAS, and he has a tremendous number of interests. He is interested in um, Indian philosophy, scientific basis of Indian philosophy in brain function. So he's modeling brain functions, and he does many things actually. Um, uh, he's interested in astrophysics, quantum theory, and cognitive science. So, since it is going to be a serious talk, he's a theoretical physics, physicist. So I'll start with a small anecdote, because people are still joining. You see, Professor Srikantan, with whom he uh, published this dialogue, this book on space, time, and causality, he was a director at TIFR. But when I joined as a young student, when Homi Bhabha was the director, and Professor Srikantan has just joined, actually, laboratories are in front of each other. Uh, there's some noise here, I guess.
और भी
Can you,
म्यूट कर दो सबको भाई.
Purvi Ben, can you mute? I'm just start with a story. So, Homi Bhabha invited Pandit Nehru to inaugurate the beautiful building of PFR, which was just built. And there was an exhibition. And since my lab was just in front of Professor Srikantan's lab, and Professor Srikantan had just built a cloud chamber. So he brought Nehruji to Srikantan's lab, and I was asked to show it. And when we were showing cloud chamber to Pandit Nehru, he asked, "Does it make cloud?" And that was, I didn't know what to answer, because those days were drought days, and that artificial rain and all that was popular. So, no, I said it makes particles. And then he said, "You should call it particle chamber." And of course they went away. So that is a little thing I thought we should start with, because it will be followed by a very serious talk, I guess. What Dr. Shishir Roy has done is, he has done a statistical analysis. It has been done by others before, on quasars and galaxies and so on. And but the technique used was not good earlier, and he has used a very fine technique. And he says this is not consistent with the Big Bang theory. So we will very much like to hear uh, uh, from Dr. Shishir Roy what he thinks of it, and how does it plug in with the Jain Lokakash ideas. And of course, I tried to introduce this about a month ago, and I think this will be taking you to very higher levels. So, with these few words, and of course, I must mention that Dr. Shishir Roy is a author of many books, and he gave me a book called Demystifying Akash. And I read from cover to cover. I read very few books from cover to cover, but it was so interesting, and I got many ideas. And from there, and of course, I asked him to see if we can use his geometrical model, same what he has used in that book, for our consciousness, Jain concept of consciousness. So we are very happy that we could have Dr. Shishir Roy here today. He is interested in Anekantvad and many other concepts. So he has also written other books on um, microbial communication and so on. But I leave it for him to proceed with the subject. Most welcome, Dr. Roy, and we are very keenly eager to hear what you say about Big Bang theory, or the steady state theory, or how solid is the evidence which you are going to advance today. With these few words, I welcome Dr. Shishir Roy. Yes, can you, Purvi, hand it over to Dr. Roy? Hello.
Yeah, Professor Rai, kindly upload your slides. Oh, there was a problem in his internet. Sorry. Oh my God.
Yeah, I don't see him here.
Yeah.
He
He was requesting me for.
सर वो आ रहे हैं, वो नहीं है, रॉय सर नहीं है।
अच्छा,
वो कौन है?
आ रहे हैं, वो वेटिंग में एडमिट हो रहे हैं।
अच्छा. So anyway, there is this big debate between
Problem in your internet.
state theory, which was advanced by
Okay, no problem. Sure.
Okay. And further by Hoyle and so on. and then Narlikar, who also was at TIFR. Um, so I had an opportunity to work with all these people. And then, of course, on the other side is the Big Bang Theory, which is the most, supported by experimental evidence, the cosmic microwave background, the Doppler redshift, and so on. So let us hear from Dr. Shishir Roy. He's back here.
Yeah, he is back.
So, Dr. Roy.
Yeah, he's back.
Yeah. Now, can you see it?
Sure.
Just a minute. Can you see it now?
No, slides are not visible.
Oh,
Screen share करिए ना.
okay. I'm trying to do it.
Wait a minute, sir. I have to make you again co-host.
Yeah, yeah. Now it said he host
Ah.
disabled. Yeah.
Right. Now it will be possible.
Have you seen it?
No, not yet.
Okay. No, again, there is problem. Let me see.
You close other files on your screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, kindly close other files in the screen.
Now, have you seen it here?
No, not yet.
No?
No. Hey, go to this middle share screen icon.
Yeah, yeah. I'm trying to go there. No, again, I am joining. Okay.
Okay, say some problem.
I'm joining again. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, share screen there.
Yes.
Yeah, I think now you can see it.
No, not yet.
Okay.
Yes, now it is there.
Now it is there.
Yes, yes. Please enlarge it.
No, it's
No, this is no, sorry, this is different thing.
सर ये तो आपका जूम मीटिंग का आया है.
जो मीटिंग का है. This is different.
yeah.
Now you please close other files which are open if there is any. Really, who could have got his slides?
Again he is left.
अरे, problem is internet.
हाँ, नहीं प्रॉब्लम नहीं है उनको.
In Bangalore, there is a problem actually. You will not believe. In Bangalore, there is a problem of internet. I have also experienced it in past.
Okay.
So below your picture on the screen, you'll see icons, right? So in the middle, there's green light which says share screen. So click it. Once you click it, you'll see your computer screen. So on
Yeah,
that
yeah.
computer screen, you can go to your presentation.
No,
Take your
that I
time.
know, but I'm not seeing my things. Just a minute.
That file might have closed. You kindly reopen the file of slides. If it is not open,
Oh,
it might have closed. Please open it. Please reopen it again.
thanks to uh, Joint Academy of Scholars in Ahmedabad and Kothari Institute. I did not meet Professor Kothari, but one incident happened that I was looking for epistemological issues in quantum theory and Indian scientists. So once I was in Delhi, and then I met the elder son of Professor Kothari, who was professor of physics in Delhi University. So he told me, yes, he had some of the papers of his father, D.S. Kothari, and he invited me to his house, and he gave me several reprints of the papers of Professor Kothari on epistemological issues in quantum theory as well as in Jainism. So I became interested in his work, but I didn't pursue that time because I was involved mainly in foundational works of quantum theory and measurement issues. And Joy, I am very much interested in joint philosophy and modern science because it seems to me that many things or conceptual issues in joint philosophy has a convergence with modern physics or modern science in general. I gave a talk also in that international joint conference arranged in Bombay IIT several years before, and the proceedings have also been published. Okay, so I am thankful to all the academies and institute to invite me to give a talk on our very recent works on redshift and the status of Big Bang cosmology. So what's my plan today? My plan is like when you use the term redshift, what exactly it means redshift in astronomy? I'll try to explain it in a layman's term because I know many people are here who may not be expert in cosmology or astrophysics. So I try my best to explain what is redshift means. And I came to know Professor Bhandari just several minutes before that he gave a talk also and tried to explain the redshift in a more maybe general terms. Then I will say what is the periodicity of redshift of quasar and galaxy. Of course, I will explain what is quasar, what is galaxy means. And then we have taken the whole data set from a Sloan Digital Sky Survey, in brief called SDSS. It is American and European mission to collect the data for quasar and galaxy. Then a new phenomena, relatively new phenomena, was discovered by Halton R. in USA regarding the galaxy and quasar pair association. But there is an interesting episode behind this, and I will tell you the story maybe by the end of my lecture. What is the price Professor R has to pay for discovering galaxy quasar pair? Then I will try to explain that why, if somebody proves that there exists kind of periodicity of redshift, in which way it gives us a challenge to Big Bang hypothesis. Now, the very central question, since the dawn of civilizations of human beings, and also this is center of the all ancient natural philosophy, that how did the world existence? I mean, since the dawn of civilization, people wonder, looking into the sky, what is stars, what is planet, what is sun, from where they emerge or where they arrive. So is it created from a sort of nothingness, or does it originate from a basic structure, basic substance or principle that still underlies its existence? These are the questions haunted human being or since the dawn of civilization itself. Now, if you look at the dominant school in modern cosmology, why I say dominant school? Because there are different type of cosmology, but the dominant school called Big Bang cosmology, Gerard Cook, who won Nobel Prize in Physics, he stated that initially there was a point, the point which doesn't have any extension in space or time. Then the point exploded and fabric of space and time itself was being created. It was the beginning of the universe. And you know, the most interesting thing is that in the beginning, I mean, before creation, there was no concept of space and time. So this is one of the big challenge, that how space and time being created. Only there is a point without any extension. Now, look at the picture. How the universe evolves. This is, of course, kind of artist impression. And we cannot see how it starts from the, the point where bang occurs. And from here, if you come here, then it comes to the radiations. So as the go on and evolution going on, then we'll coming to the human being here, the thinking man. So when he's looking back, then possibly he will look into this kind of picture. So what is that? Hello. So initially there is a capsule of energy, and then high temperature of plasma, then particles, atoms, animals, then physical evolution, chemical evolution.
अभी तो राय था ना उससे उधर बैठो इधर ये चला लेता हूँ
Hello, yes. So then comes the planetary systems. Initially there are quasar. Initially there are particles, then atoms, molecules, then planetary systems, galaxy, quasar, etc., and ultimately we, the human being, we are the kind of the youngest element in the universe of the whole, in the evolution of the universe. So if you picturize the whole Big Bang, we can see that starting from a point, the bang, big explosion happens, and slowly this kind of like particles, atoms, galaxy, quasars, animals, and then chemical evolution happen. Now you can look at another. Here is the Big Bang. Then after 10 to the minus 46 seconds, this quantum gravity era comes. Then inflation starts, and then after 380,000 years after, we have cosmic microwave background radiation, a radiation which is all pervading, ubiquitous, and spreading all over the universe. And finally, we are here now, where Big Bang plus 14 billion years. I mean, this is very amazing. When I say billion years, 14 billion years, etc., it's very difficult to see how big the number. And if we summarize our present knowledge of the universe, which can be classified as, we say microcosms, then intermediate scale, and then macrocosms. These microcosms and macrocosms are also discussed in various schools of Indian philosophy too. So when we say microcosms, we are saying in terms of their length scale. So when we say 10 to the power minus 30 centimeters, then Earth and solar systems, inanimate matter, elements, hydrogen to uranium, animate object, amoeba to man, DNA, etc. And macrocosms, 4.3 light years to 10 to the power 10 light years. Stars, galaxies, cluster of galaxies, neutron stars, black holes, accelerating, expanding, dark matter, etc., etc. So normally, all the objects in the universe are classified according to scale, length scale. And these are the length scale for microcosmos, 10 to the power minus 30 to 10 to the power 8 centimeters, and macrocosm 4.3 light years to 10 to the power 10 light years. So let us now come directly into our topic, that what is redshift. Redshift is normally defined by this number, Z. This is a pure number, and it's a ratio between the difference of the wavelength. I mean, Z, O, you are looking for a particular object in the sky or extraterrestrial object, and the light is coming from that object, and you are having hello? Yeah, so you are looking the light emitted by an object in the sky, related to the light. Hello? Yeah.
Now kindly unmute yourself. I have muted everybody. I mean, kindly unmute yourself. Professor Roy. Please.
Yeah, now can you listen? I have unmuted. Can you
Unmute
listen
yourself.
now?
Yes,
Now,
yes, sure.
what is redshift? Redshift means if you're looking into the sky, say the light is coming from a particular object in the sky, and the light which is emitted from that object has a wavelength of lambda. So it is called lambda E, and the same light we are observing from the Earth with a telescope, with a spectrometer, we say this is lambda O, means of lambda wavelength observed. Then if you take the difference between lambda O minus lambda E by lambda E, it's a ratio, change in wavelength by wavelength, then it gives you a pure number, and that is called shift, or I will explain why it is called, when it is called redshift, or there is another kind of shift called blue shift. Let me try to explain it. Now, yeah. Okay. Now, if this number redshift be greater than 0, I mean the source of the light moves away from the observer, then we say we get redshift. And if it is less than 0, I mean source move towards the observer, towards us in the Earth, then we get blue shift. So you might ask me, can you give examples when we can say some shift of the wavelength is happening in such a way so that we are getting blue shift, means object is coming towards us, not going away from us. Yes, the good example is our nearer galaxy called Andromeda galaxy is moving towards our own galaxy, where is our home, called Milky Way galaxy. I'll show you within a minute what is the artist impression about Milky Way galaxy. So the Andromeda galaxy is moving towards our own Milky Way galaxy within the local group. And then we can say that this is blue shift. When or Z greater than 0. Now, what are galaxy and quasar means? A galaxy is a very, very large and extended object. It's a bound system of stars, stellar remnants, interstellar gas, dust, and if you think the dark matter too. And quasar is a quasi-stellar radio source. More than 1,000,000 quasars have been found. The nearest known quasar is about 600 million light years. Can you think of 600 million light years? Light years means, you know, the speed of the light is 3 into 10 to the power 10 centimeter per second. So per second, it goes 3 into 10 to the power centimeter. And so you can calculate per hour what distance it will go, then per day what distance it will go, then 365 days make a year. So you can think that in 1 year, how much distance the light will travel. And our nearest quasar is 600 million light years. Well, you can think in terms of number, but it's very difficult to visualize. Quasars are normally much brighter than galaxy and far away from us. And these properties of quasar can give some information about the origin of the universe. I mean, how universe is being created. So this is our Milky Way galaxies. Like a spiral structure, and we are here, the Earth solar system here. Our home is here somewhere, because this is Earth solar system. Sun is there, and the Earth is moving around the sun. And in the Earth, we have different continents. We are in Asia, then in India, and then in Ahmedabad or Bangalore. So it's very difficult to locate our own house, but we can approximately say somewhere here. Now, what is the dimension of this Milky Way galaxy? Our own galaxy, Milky Way, this contains around 100 to 400 billion stars and is about 100,000 light years across, or 10 to the power 18 kilometers across. It sounds like a huge number. And it is, at least until we start comparing it to other galaxies. One neighboring galaxy, I told you before, Andromeda galaxy. And what is the width, what is the width of the Andromeda galaxy? It is 220,000 light years wide. So you can think how big this Andromeda galaxy. Now we are coming to quasar. It is called, sometimes called star-shaped. Quasar is star-like because if you look at the telescope, then the diffraction of the spikes produced in telescope will show you like a star here. That's why quasar is star-like, but not it is a star. And what is the dimension of the quasar? I can tell you that a quasar is 12 billion times the size of the sun. Again, this is very, very huge number. 12 billion times the size of the sun. This is approximately a dimension of quasar. And discovery of quasar, different names are there. It marks an important step in understanding how quasar, the most powerful objects in the universe, has evolved from the earliest epoch, only 900 million years after Big Bang, which is thought to be happened 13.7 billion years ago. And quasars are normally 100 times brighter than galaxies. Now we will come, I am telling you up till now the Big Bang, because this is the dominant cosmology. And I have not talked about anything about our recent results, that why it makes us feel to challenge the Big Bang hypothesis. So here's a Edwin Hubble, and who gave evidences, who found evidences that universe should be expanded. So Hubble, Edwin Hubble, he was working in Mount Wilson with the new 2.56 meter Hooker telescope. And that telescope was the most powerful telescope at that time. So he was able to peer into the sky with greater detail that anyone had previously done. And Hubble, Edwin Hubble, and his assistant, Humason, they discovered a very, very interesting fact. They discovered a rough proportionality between the distances and the redshift of 46 galaxies. I mean, distances from us, from Earth. So they studied initially the light emitted from 46 galaxies and the shift of the spectral line. What it means? Again, this is a puzzle. You know, when a light emitted from an object, say there are different elements like sodium, potassium, magnesiums, or hydrogens. So if you excite these elements, they will emit light. And they have a particular wavelength of the light which is emitted from these elements. Now it is found that suppose some light is emitted from sodium. We know exactly what is the wavelength of the light emitted from sodium in the laboratory. Now, through the telescope, if you measure the same light, you will see that its wavelength increases, is greater than the exact wavelength of the light which is observed in the laboratory, and it is going towards red. If you recall the Vip geode, so red is the largest wavelength. So you can see the wavelength is larger and it is towards the side of the red. That's why it is called red shift. And as blue light has a lower wavelength, so in some cases, the wavelength we found in the Earth is lower than exactly the light which is emitted in the lab, and it is going towards blue. That's why we say blue shift. And 1929, Hubble, he discovered or he proposed a very interesting phenomena, and he and his assistant, Humason, they found that this redshift depends on the ratio of the velocity by which the object is moving divided by the speed of the light, which is small c here. Speed of the light is constant and maximum. So this Z redshift is proportional to distance. So by measuring the redshift, you can say from how much distance the object is situated there. And it depends on the velocity. Velocity means the relative velocity of the object which is moving towards us or away from us, and the observer which we are standing in the Earth. So you can say that this is the observational support for a new theory on the origin of the universe proposed by Lamater, which is called Big Bang. So this is a starting point when the people say universe is expanding, because Z depends on, here you can see velocity by c. So the variation of Z depends on the relative velocity. And what it means, let me try to explain it. This is like the Doppler shift in acoustics. In school level textbook in physics, they gave an example that you are standing in a railway station and a train is giving whistle and it is passing through it, it is going away from you. Then with a simple algebraic formula, you can see the frequency or wavelength of that sound which is coming to you is changing and depends on the relative velocity of the train and the observer standing in the station. It is called Doppler shift. It is experimentally verified in the laboratory. So here, when they say this red shift, they said that a Doppler-like mechanism operates there as if the galaxies are going away from us or they are coming towards us. So there is relative velocity between the observer and the object. So this red shift, which depends on the Doppler-like mechanism, this observation of Hubble is the first experimental evidence of expanding universe. I mean, they claimed it, but there is a long story when you say that no, there are alternate theories of explaining this redshift, and you don't need the concept of relative velocities between observer and the object. Now, what is called periodicity of redshift? Many astronomers, they measured the redshift of different galaxies, and they found both galaxies and quasar, and they found that here, if you look here, redshift Z equal to 0.30, 0.60, 0.96. These type of peaks are there in the values of Z, and there is a particular multiple. It is multiple of 0.061. That's why we say these are periodic, because the period is here 0.061. Now, if you look at the analysis, I mean the observational part, this is for quasar redshift, this is for galaxy redshift. And you look from the histogram that these are the peaks. It's not continuous. You can, peaks means, say around this peak, the most of the quasar or galaxy, they are distributed. Around this peak, most of the quasar or galaxy again distributed. So you can find some peaks in the distribution of quasar or galaxy. And if you look at the, like I have shown you before, that here, their peaks are determined, say at point of 0.30, 0.60, 0.96, and which are nothing but multiples of 0.061. So this is called 0.061 is called period, and the redshift here are called periodicity of redshift of both quasar and galaxy. So before coming into the controversy, let me tell about the data set. Because before us, many scientists, they tried to analyze the peaks of the galaxy and redshift, taking some samples of data set. And many people, many astronomers who are working from conventional Big Bang hypothesis, they discarded it because they said that these data you have taken, firstly, the sample size was not so large. And there is a concept called selection effect. The selection effect is there, binning effect is there. So what you are getting, these are artifacts. These are not the real. And they discarded the results. So a lot of controversy arises. But what we have done, we have taken the catalog. I told you that Sloan Digital Sky Survey, this is a kind of joint observation by European and American Space Agency. Every 2 years, they publish the catalog for quasar and redshift data, huge data. And they constructed the data from a survey called BOSS, B-O-S-S. BOSS means Baryon Oscillation Spectroscopic Survey. And this catalog, which we have used, is a most recent catalog. And this catalog, we have taken 1,66,583 number of quasars. So, this data set contains redshift values ranging from minus 0.0049 to 7.0112 with luminosity absolute length less than minus 20.5. So it's a huge number. So, I mean, if you want to analyze it, you need a kind of methodology which can tackle the big data. Nowadays, many people in computer science, climatology, etc., they are working on how to handle the big data. And for also galaxy, it's a huge number. So in our case, we have taken a huge sample size. So people cannot say that sample size is small and there is selection criteria. What is the methodology we have used in analyzing the data? Normally, in signal processing, people used to understand what is there in the signals, they use a method called singular value decomposition method. So this is the first time we have used this singular value decomposition method because my two collaborators from Indian Statistical Institute, they are expert in signal processing and they are using singular value decomposition method for many years. So what we did, we have taken optimal bin width selection using kernel density estimator. Then what is the algorithm? We have chosen algorithm for optimal bin width computation. And then the period, we determine the periodicity using the singular value decomposition method. Because normally singular value decomposition method is used for a periodic or quasi-period signals. I am not going into details regarding the statistical analysis because this is too technical and it needs a lot of time. So, okay. So what is the reason, our findings? We analyzed this huge cosmological data set and we have put into this table here. If you look the data set, that quasar redshift of DR12, I mean latest catalog, that time we got it. And we have divided the range of the redshift. We have taken the redshift from Z equal to 0.03 to 7 point something. So redshift range, we have divided into several zones that Z greater than 0.03, then Z is greater than 0.03 but less than 1, then it lies between 1 and 3, then lies between 3 and 4. And similarly, for redshift data, we have taken Z greater than 0.03 and then we have determined what is the length of the period and what is the confidence interval. So we have found 95% confidence interval computed over 1,000 simulations, and this is signal to noise ratio. I am not going into details about all these things. So here you look, we used our singular value decomposition method and you see the peaks here. We got very prominent peaks and we have calculated also the periods. Now, what is the problem? In which way we contested the present understanding? Okay. Present understanding is that the redshift or blue shift of quasar or galaxy, if you look at the Doppler's formula, that Z equal to velocity by speed of light. I mean relative velocity between the object and the observer divided by speed of the light, small c. Now velocity is a continuous parameter. It varies continuously. So the number which is Z of the order of V by C, that should be continuous. Now, with the huge data set and very powerful method, singular value decomposition, we have found that periodicity is not an artifact of the computation methods, but it's real. So if the periodicity exists in nature, I mean, this kind of discrete structure, then how do we explain it? Because so far, people tried to explain the redshift with Doppler mechanism or gravitational redshift, but gravitational redshift won't explain it. This is for very, very small redshift. For large redshift, it's very difficult to explain. Now, if the Doppler mechanism fails here, why? Because velocity is a continuous parameter. It's not discrete. So if it is not explained by Doppler mechanism, then how can we explain the expansion of the universe? So in that way, we are in problem that how to accept the Big Bang hypothesis, because Big Bang hypothesis is based on the one of the pillars of Big Bang hypothesis is that the universe is expanding. And as universe is expanding, then we are getting the continuous value of redshift. Now, on the other side, from observational data, we are getting discrete value of redshift, so which cannot be explained with the Doppler mechanism. If it cannot be explained by Doppler mechanisms, how can we explain or propose the expansion of the universe? This is a big challenge. Again, we also studied another very strange phenomena called galaxy-quasar pair. What is that? Here, if you look, Hartonaut, I told you, an American astronomer, he observed through his telescope that quasar and galaxy here, they are physically associated. Normally, quasars are supposed to be very, very far away from galaxy. Now, if they are physically associated, so distance appear to be same. Distance of the galaxy and distance of the quasar from Earth seems to be same. But he observed that this value of redshift for this quasar and galaxy are different. One is Z equal to 0.018, another is Z equal to 1.17. So how do you explain the different redshift, though they are in the same distance from us? Because if there is change of redshift means the distance, I told you Z equal to V by C of the order of distance. So distance scale will be different. Now Hartonaut observed a few galaxy quasar pair which clearly show that though redshift are different, but distance remains same because they are physically connected. So the whole conventional astronomers or the cosmologists, they were in troubles. So what happens, this is the story of saga of Hartonaut. They squeezed the observation time of Hartonaut. And like if you squeeze the observation telescope time from an astronomer, it seems he is dead. He is going to die because he is an experimentalist. He needs telescope time. So he was forced to leave USA and he came to Germany and became director of Max Planck Institute. He then, a lot of other astronomers, they found this association apart from Hartonaut. So Hartonaut, he has written a beautiful book called Seeing Red. And he told cosmology now becomes like a religion. You have a faith, blind faith, and you believe in that. Ultimately, Hartonaut, he died a couple of years before, but he had to leave USA because of his observation, science based on observation, and people are denying the observational fact. So we have analyzed with our singular value decomposition or statistical method, the redshift of galaxy pair, galaxy and quasar pair. And again, we found some kind of periodicity of quasar galaxy pair. So these periodicities are real. Again, we are having a problem to take the concept of expanding universe model. We have some data here. We analyze quasar galaxy pairs. Okay. So the problem is how to interpret. What is the physical interpretation? If it is not explained by Doppler shift or Doppler light mechanisms, means the universe is not expanding. Then how do you explain this periodicity of redshift? There are two conventional alternatives to account for discretization of redshift, or somebody say anomalous redshift. One is Doppler shift, another one is gravitational redshift. But they cannot explain physical association of low redshift galaxy with multiple quasars. Third one, Jan Narlikar from Ayuka, the famous Indian astrophysicist. Jan Narlikar, Woodbridge, and one student of Narlikar Das, they proposed a hypothesis called variable mass hypothesis. And with the help of that, they claimed that this discretization of the redshift can be explained. But still there are a lot of speculation in this model. And the fourth one, this is very, very important, called Wolf effect. The physicist who, they know that mostly they read one book of Principle of Optics by famous physicist Max Born and Emil Wolf. So this man is Emil Wolf from Rochester, University of Rochester. He found a very interesting thing, that he found that when light propagates in a medium whose refractive index is random, or the medium is not homogeneous, then even you can get the shift of the frequency of the light, even in the absence of relative motion between observer and the object. So here we have a mechanism which can explain redshift without considering the relative velocity between the object and the observer. And we have also done many works on this line with Wolf effect and its application to cosmological redshift. And again, Wolf has to pay the price for that. This discovery was done in 1986, and subsequently, at least in 4 laboratories in US and other parts of the world, have been experimentally verified in the lab. So after that, Wolf thought it can be extended to explain the redshift of quasar and galaxy, because it is found that quasar and galaxy, their environments are different. I mean, maybe ionic medium or different type of medium. So because of the existence of the medium, when light is propagating that kind of medium, this shift happens, though they are not moving away from us or moving towards us. So he was giving a seminar, colloquium, in some other US university. And after the end of seminar, he got a phone call from University of Rochester that somebody, big guy from that university, he called the rector of Rochester University saying that what this man is doing, he is like a madman, what he is saying. So, you know, again, this is like a church who is controlling, you know, the cosmology or like its models of the origin of the universe. Wolf effect is very, very promising, because this is the only mechanisms which can explain the redshift or blue shift without having the relative motion between the observer and the object. But in other model called variable mass hypothesis by Narlikar and other people, they did not consider the redshift mechanism different from Doppler. So their model, apparently though succeeded in studying the discreteness of the redshift, but there are a lot of speculation which needs careful attention. And again, my personal experience, I was in US, then we arranged a workshop in University of Pavia in Italy on the alternate theory of cosmology. So from US, we around 5 or 6 people came and joined to the workshop. Horton Arp was there, and many other influencing physicists were there. It's a 3-day workshop. After 2 days, we left, and very few people were there. Then we came to know on the 3rd day, several physicists from University of Pavia, they forcibly entered into the seminar room, and they had assaulted our colleagues there. So it is happening everywhere. And we have to honest and careful in understanding science itself. Now, there exist various cosmological models like Big Bang cosmology, steady state cosmology, cyclic universe, and tire photon hypothesis, then finally Wolf mechanisms and dynamic multiple scattering model, which we are doing for many years. And if you look at the Indian philosophical systems like Vedic wisdom and theory of creation, Rig Veda Mandala 10, they discussed on the theory of creation, and joint cosmological model, which I understand is related like steady state model, and cyclic universe was also discussed in Vishnu Puran. So what we have done and what we are challenging, that the present understanding of redshift needs to be revised, and it has a deep impact on the pillars of Big Bang hypothesis. So we are not saying which model will be right, but we are showing the reality is that we need to rethink everything, the foundation itself. And thank you for listening. Okay, so any questions or any suggestions? We can open discussion.
Thank you, Professor Roy, for talking in detail about your model. So,